All right, now let's say at some point in the future, we decide to use Bootstrap in this application. Bootstrap has a fairly complex navigation element. So as we add various elements here to implement a Bootstrap navigation bar, this template would get too complex. At that point, we may decide to move all this stuff for the navigation into a separate component. So here in terminal, I'm going to generate a component for our navigation bar. ng generate component nav. Okay, so this creates a new component and also registers it in our app module. Now I'm going to cut all this code here and go to nav.html and paste it here. Now let's take a look at the nav component. So nav.ts. Look at the selector for this component. So I'm going to use this in the template for our app component. Just above the router outlet, app-nav. Save. Now let's see what happens to our tests. Okay, we have a broken test. And here's the error. app-nav is not a known element. The reason for this is because in the configuration of our testing module, we have not declared this nav component. We only have app component. Now here we have a few options. One option is to import nav component and declare it in this module. So add it here. This would make the test pass. However, this test that we have here, which is for testing the link to to-dos page, does not belong to this app component anyway. We need to move this to nav component. So I'm going to cut this from here and go to nav.spec.ts and paste it here. Okay, now our test is in the right place, but we still have to deal with this error. app-nav is not a known element. So back in the configuration of our testing module in app component spec, we can either declare this nav component here, or we can use this schemas property. And in this array, pass no underline errors, underline schema. This tells Angular to ignore any elements or attributes that it doesn't recognize. So if you have a complex template with a lot of child components or directives, you may find it easier to simply use this schema as opposed to declaring all those individual child components in this testing module. However, there is a problem with this approach. Back in our template, if I make a mistake here and instead of app-nav, use app-nav2, our tests are not going to catch this issue. So I personally do not like this approach, but I decided to include it in this lecture because as you're reading stuff on the web, you may come across this and you may wonder, what is this all about? So my recommendation is to declare child components here. But if you have a situation where that's getting a little bit too complex, you can use this no errors schema as one of the tools in your toolbox. Now let's import it on the top. So on this line, we should import it from Angular core. No errors schema. Save. Okay, we have a broken test, but this is coming from nav component, not app component. So our app component is perfectly fine. Now look at the error. Router link with href is not defined. So back in the spec file, in the nav component, this is where the error is coming from. In our test, we're querying elements by this router link directive. And we have not imported it on the top, so it's not defined. So let's import it. Let me show you a shortcut. Import, space, enter. Now we add the module, Angular/router, press tab. One more time. It takes us here, and then we add router link with href. We should also import the router testing module here. So one more time, import, space, enter. At Angular, router testing, tab, router testing module. And then import it here. Otherwise, that directive is not going to be executed. So router testing module with routes and pass an empty array here. Save. All tests are passing. Beautiful.